Haley.
Oh, oh no, I've got the wrong speakers on. I need to change this. Okay, that's better. I've got speakers in the room that are in the ceiling, and so when you said hi to me just now, it sounded like God was saying good morning, because your voice was coming from overhead. So.
Hi, Lee.
Tajinder, good morning. Taj, good old Taj.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I was just giving Vinesh a little bit of a hard time because in the room that I'm in, I have speakers in the ceiling to listen to music loudly while I hammer out things on the keyboard. And when I said, good morning to Vinesh, he said, hi, how are you? And it sounded like God was calling down from above to say hello. All right, I'm seeing Chaim on the call reminds me of a very rather large announcement coming forth. We should have on the agenda. I'm about to come out of my seat on this one. This is awesome. All right. Oh, I can't hold it back. I'm getting really excited. All right. Hey, all. We've got a few folks pouring in faster than I can click the admit button. The community meeting minutes, the link to them popped into the chat. If you don't have access to those minutes, please just request it. I think everyone on this call does so far. Drop in your name if you would. And while you're dropping in your name, if you have any items to discuss today, also drop those into the topics section. We've only got 3, but I'm not sure that our presenter for the first topic will be here today or not. So TBD. All right, a couple of items that we're about 3 after, so I'm going to start to hammer out a couple of our items as we go. One is that we've had some new folks join this week, and so their names are listed at the top of the page. We had some new folks join last week, and if we start to measure that, well, I'd say we're growing. I'd say that's exciting. I'd say for some of you, you recognize how much I want for you to get comfortable in your roles and in your areas of focus, because I can't keep up. So the more comfortable you guys are, the faster we'll move, and the more I'll get out of the way. All right, there was one item. Quick couple housekeeping things. One is, hey, welcome to today's call. We record the meetings and post them on YouTube. So please be aware of that. Please treat others kindly on the call. Quick question, a couple of you know when a relatively new community member. I forget his last name, but he was Kush. He was the one that was interested in collaborating on distributed performance testing or distributed performance management. Has anyone heard from Wen? If not, Kush, could you poke him on Slack and encourage him to jump into?
I didn't get the name. Can you pardon?
Oh, Wen is his first name. It was.
I pinged him last week, and I even gave him a reminder. I don't think he has come online since the results of G-Talk went public.
Oh, okay. That could be. He could be unmotivated after that. I don't know. Okay. Okay. Well, fair enough. Very good. So, welcome all newcomers. Is there anyone on the call today that hasn't introduced before? Taj, I know you introduced on Wednesday or Wednesday, but maybe if you would do that here, because I think there's a few folks that didn't get to meet you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that was a different meeting. So I can introduce myself. Hi everyone, I'm Tajinder. I'm a software engineer based in Northern Virginia, US. Just recently joined this community and still going through the initial contributor guide. Hoping to start learning and contributing soon. Thank you.
That's awesome. And Taj, remind me. I thought I saw a master somewhere in your title, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's the like very concrete designation which I have currently. But I call myself as just in general like software engineer. But within my company, there are different basically titles as you grow. Basically, based on how you grow, that's I have a master software engineer title within the company, which is basically you go from one title or one level of engineering to another level based on your basically growth. You can call it like a relatively more senior software engineer or more little more than that. So it's a different hierarchy there.
Okay, very good. No, that's I love that term. I also love how humble you are. That's cool. I figured that that's actually a good, a good way of bringing up the Meshmates program, which we kind of talked about last time, and we'll talk about again today. But there's a second program coming after that called, well, we'll see. Maybe it's called Mesh Master. And,
Okay.
and so, yeah, it kind of reminded me of so Meshmates is a new program that a few folks are participating in now, and it's about helping ensure that new community members are, more or less have an onboarding buddy, if you will, or just have like at least one go-to person to spend some time with, get acquainted with the various facets of the projects. And we've been fortunate that a few folks have already been paired up. So Nipur with Niket and Nikhil with Dushyant, Kanishkar with Lidor. Oh, that's great. By the way, so I wanted to say congrats to those pairings. Thank you for the folks who've been here for some time and have kind of signed up for that. So there's more of that to come. And actually, I guess Dushyant or Taj, I didn't mean for this to happen this way, but actually take a look at that program and
yep.
If partnering up with someone might be nice, like just signal, because there's a bunch of folks.
Yeah, sure. I think that's a great. I was not aware of it. I'll definitely look around and pair up with someone in the team to speed up the process, right? And also getting myself more. I can that way. It would be great. Like other people in the team can know more easily about myself, like about how. Especially like where I can start contributing, and I'm still going through the contributor guide. It's very helpful. It's good. I'm going through the videos. and I think there is a category of help wanted GitHub issues, right, where you can get started. So I'm looking in that direction right now, where I can basically pick something simple and just to get started. But yeah, while doing this, I think I'll ask someone in the community to pair up with me as a buddy to speed up the process.
That's perfect. That's fantastic. I have a few suggestions if someone doesn't pair off before the end of the call. So.
Okay.
Well, really, without any further ado, it's Mr. Hellman. How are you this morning?
I'm great, doing really well.
Anything going on in your world?
Yeah, so Octarine is in the process of being acquired by VMware. It was announced on Wednesday, and we are joining the Carbon Black security team, and the goal is to be integrated into the Tanzu set of products from VMware, which includes obviously Kubernetes and the Tanzu service mesh as well. We'll be covering container security, network security for Kubernetes and Istio.
Goodness. Wow. That's awesome. How long? When did you guys found? Or how long of a journey was it?
3 years.
Yeah, it was pretty.
2017.
Yeah, pretty. All things considered, that's a pretty quick ride. I mean, it's a pretty. You guys.
Short and sweet.
Yeah, you guys hit it out of the park.
Yeah, especially in this specific time. We feel very fortunate to be able to complete this deal in this timing. Yeah, and also with a company that's close by. We're very happy, very excited.
See, this is if you guys can't pick up on this, this is another reason why I like Chaim. The amount of humility that he's conveying while talking about all the hard work that those guys have done is pretty cool. Yeah, I couldn't be happier for you guys. It's just such a cool. Yeah, there's a couple of Tanzu service meshers in the community here, and they've been on the call. Actually, I think some of so Manish Gupta and Sergio P. But were they? I think that they were. Manish, I think at least, was kind of part of maybe the integration testing that had gone on, or the compatibility that Octarine has with the Tanzu service mesh.
I believe so. We worked on some integrations even before the acquisition, integrating our events into their dashboards. So that's something we did before. But yeah, we expect in the next few months for the Octarine service mesh to kind of be absorbed and become one with the Tanzu service mesh.
Oh man!
Probably one slot less in the.
Yeah, that's what.
In the meshery supported meshes.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that.
Oh, good.
Well, if you spin it the other way, look, we already support the Tanzu service mesh. Oh man! Oh, that's so cool. Kush had been trying to help sustain the Octarine adapter.
Yes. And thank you.
But yeah, I guess I'm kind of somebody else want to take over the call. I'm kind of left just speechless. This is so cool. Well, okay. Well, you know, don't forget about the little guys as you, you know.
This is my Friday morning routine.
Good. All right, fair enough. Okay, that's cool. There were a couple of announcements last week, none quite like Octarine's. A couple that I'll call back up. One is that there was a KISS conference, a virtual conference. I think there was about 60 or more folks that had attended. It was put on by Sako. He was one of the first community members here. And he gave Meshri a very prominent stage to present on. And so I know that they've posted their video recordings. So if any of you want to see an example of how your works are presented on stage, you should be able to find them at that link somewhere. Speaking of your works being presented on stage, Kanishkar is and has been busy on some WebAssembly, some awesome items. And a bit of Rust. And we're gonna show off that work at the upcoming DockerCon 2020. I think we're currently slotted to show that work off with Istio, but we wanted to, well, show some love to our other partner, HashiCorp, and see if we can give a presentation about Meshri, Docker Desktop, WebAssembly, and hopefully console. So stay tuned. If you don't hear from Kanishkar over the next week and a half, that's because he's trying to make things work. Last week, I said that some of you have helped deliver some online live training through O'Reilly. It's the Introduction to Istio training, in which we use Meshri to stand up Istio, stand up a sample app, configure the app, teach people all about Istio. And there's been an ask for an advanced Istio course, as well as an ask for Linkerd fundamentals. And last week I made a call for interest in potentially help, engaging in those. I know one of you had signaled just after the call, which is great. I'm going to follow up with you. But I wanted to call it out a couple of weeks in a row, just because not all of us can make it every week, and so signal there. Another thing is that there are there's two O'Reilly books on service meshes being written right now, or about to be. So one is that O'Reilly's asking for a second edition of this shorter book, and so I'm calling it. And so I'm going to go off and do this, and when I do, I'm going to include a bunch of other things that just weren't there 2 years ago when this was first written. So now I'm a bit hesitant to call out Octarine specifically, because I don't know if I want to. It might age the shelf life of the book might go down just because. But I'll probably err on the side of doing it anyway. Anyway, the point being is, for those of you who are just starting on our SMI conformance tooling work, that's going to be a new section in this book. And then this other book that is just now getting underway. And the reason I'm calling it out isn't to talk about things that I'm doing in specific. It's to say I don't believe that I'm going to be successful doing this onto my own. And so I've kind of called it out a couple of times that if there's interest in potentially engaging in a couple of different ways on these efforts, then let me know. And that second book, the Service Mesh Patterns book, it will talk about SMI. It will, I would hope maybe talk about Hamlet. It'll talk about a number of things. Good. So other things that are being written down about Meshri, one of the Docker captains in the community here, Luke, he's drafting a blog post. I think it's a draft, but if anyone's wanting to help review it, because it's actually pretty good, Just let me know, because there's a Google Doc that has a copy of it, and you can go through and comment on it. It would be helpful and encouraging to Luke to get your comments. Suko has been doing a fair number of comments. That's been good. Kush has also drafted a blog post that you can see in preview here to go up on Layer5, and it's going to talk about getting started with Mesh CTL. And so he's also made a call out for comments. So please, if anyone, please go review that. And there's an open PR on that, so you can make your comments in the PR. Lastly, some of this is a recap from last week, but it's again worth calling out, is that there's some internships that we're participating in. There's some updates here. So we've got two of our own, if you will, are now interning with Google Summer of Code. So Naveen and Kush, and now Kanishkar is also interning through Community Bridge. We did apply for a Google Season of Docs and did get word back that Layer5 itself is not accepted. And so Kush, given that you've been involved in that, one thing for us to consider is our involvement through the CNCF. So we can come back. Okay, good. Those are the announcements. Again, a couple of calls out for interest in engaging. Yep, Kush, go ahead. And then today we were going to have a presentation, I think from Cody. I don't know. I think this probably slipped off of Cody's radar because he was excited to do it last week, but needed to schedule. I think he had given a bunch of announcements. Nick, was it 1.8 was announced yesterday and some of its capabilities, I think around multi-cluster.
Yeah, the 1.8 release is out in beta. Predominantly, so the multi-cluster capabilities have been there for quite a while. What we did was made it like ridiculously easy. So now if you want to federate to Kubernetes clusters, you basically install console service mesh on one Kubernetes cluster, install using the Helm chart, install it on the second cluster. But when you install it on the second, you give it a like a key, which you generate from the first one, which allows it to kind of do the initial handshake and federation. And then once the two clusters are federated, you can basically communicate as one big service mesh, and kind of send cross-service traffic, do cluster failover, canaries cross-cluster. And the way that we do clustering in console is we have like an edge gateway or a connector, which is like at the edge of the cluster. And we don't really care like where that is. Actually, because we're using MTLS for security, you could put that open on the internet because the traffic is encrypted, but it's also secured with MTLS. So if you want to do multi-cluster cross-cloud, you can literally just put those gateways behind a public load balancer, because unless you've got the valid service mesh identity, there's no traffic going inbound on that. So yeah, that came out, and also the new capability for terminating gateways. And what terminating gateways do is they give you a secure way to bridge into like a PCI VPC. So for example, you might have a PCI zone, which is where all of your data lives, and it like your managed data stores or things like that. So rather than having a service proxy for each managed data store, which means you've got to run it on a VM or something like that, you deploy a terminating gateway or a cluster of terminating gateways, and then you can basically have secure service mesh traffic into the PCI zone, and the terminating gateway will route to your managed data store. So it's just a lot easier than trying to work out what routing rules you need between a Kubernetes cluster and a like a managed data store, because the general answer is you've got to like grant access to the entire cluster because you can't pinpoint it down to a single application. But with service mesh and terminating gateways, you can do that now. So those are the two main things that came out there, which is, I think they're going to be pretty cool. The Federation one, that's definitely the one for me, which was, I'm really pleased it's all been cleared up, because previously you had to do a whole bunch of stuff for Federation with VPNs and security management and stuff, and now you don't need to. Everything's encrypted over the service mesh, which is cool.
Yeah, a quick comment that token model, it should be familiar to a lot of folks, or like what a really, you know, that
yeah,
does.
I mean, it's pretty much exactly the same principle that, like when you join a node to a Kubernetes cluster, it works in exactly the same way. You generate a token on like the parent or one of the other clusters, nodes in the cluster. You give it the various TLS certificates that it needs, and then that token is like a one-shot token, which is used for bootstrapping. And then it's obviously, once it's been used, it becomes invalid. So even if it leaks out to the internet, it doesn't matter once the nodes have federated. So yeah, I think it's a really nice, straightforward model to use.
Yeah. It almost feels like an ode to Docker Swarm. Excuse me. Very good. Well, with the 1.8 release, does anyone have any other comments or questions on the 1.8 release? A final comment from me, and that is, I feel like with the 1.8 release, I finally achieved just near perfection with taking dictation from Nick and just capturing those almost real time. So I'm getting good. Okay, next topic is the V040 release. This thing has only been pending for 2 months. I'm not sure. I lost track at this point. Shivai, are you on by chance? Shivai has been very helpful here in terms of getting it prepped, ready, also improving the process by which we do releases. But I know he's been in the right way, prioritized some exams over the last few weeks. And I don't know, and so I guess if any of you are in contact with him, you know, please let him know. Probably after today, we'll get a new, we'll shift him off as release manager there and try to get it over the line. Okay, next topic. There's a couple of them. I'm going to skip the first one because it involves more of me talking, I think, and putting Nitish on the spot as well. The next one was mesh rectl interaction with Kubernetes deployment and future style. Oh, okay, yeah, I guess that does put Nitish on the spot as well. Very good, actually, for either of the two of them. Nitish, do you feel comfortable chatting about these?
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, let me just. All right. So yeah, we were discussing the mesh rectl update command, right? So we had this discussion the last dev meeting, and we followed through with it. And there were some thoughts around what is intuitive for the user experience. We don't want users to get confused on what a command does. So I think the thought process after some discussions last night with Lee were that we need to segregate certain commands under the right sections. I need to start, like we have the perf command, we need to start breaking things into a subset of commands under system. And so that's where we would drop the update command, and you could use it to update your server. You could use it to update your clients. And thinking of more features, like if we go ahead with this, is a feature like updating or downgrading to a certain release version, which would pull in the right metric binary, and it would also change the image tags on your server and spin that up. So I think that was the basic discussion we had. If I'm missing something, Lee, go ahead and add to it.
Yeah, just to help characterize that, I'll say that for those of you, all of you who are familiar with Meshry CTL, and many of you who've added to it and made it what it is today, that when you execute the command today, you all of the commands, save for one of them, and that one being perf, all of the rest of the commands, cleanup and logs and start stop status and update it and check its version, those are all can be categorized under, for purposes of managing the life cycle of Meshry as an application, whereas perf is for doing a different category of capabilities around performance management. And as time goes on, more and more and more of what's in the Meshry UI will be made available through that same REST API on the server. Those same capabilities will be exposed in Meshry CTL. And as we go to do that, we want to we've got guiding principles as to how to build out Meshry CTL. And so one of those is to provide user experiences that are familiar to people. People are very familiar with Docker as a CLI, with kubectl as a CLI. And it's also to take learnings from those CLIs. As we go to lean into their user experience, we'd also want to learn from their history. And I consider that a good learning from, and please disagree, but a good learning from Docker's history is that when Docker as a CLI first came around, it was much of the commands, and I think it's still mostly true today. If you go run a Docker, for an example, Docker run Nginx. Well, that implicit to Docker run is that, and when you type out Nginx, it's the notion that you're going to be running a container. And that was sort of the initial myopic focus of Docker as a utility, Docker as a capability. And later, there were other objects came into being and became first class. So things like a volume, a network, an image. And so later on, Docker as a CLI was kind of refactored to do, maybe I should be typing this instead of fingering the air. And that is, later on, you could type Docker run container Nginx. So you'd specify the fact that you were talking about managing that type of an object, a container, and that it just wasn't implicit, sort of the top tier object. And so maybe I'm stretching the analogy here, but I consider that we have a bunch of top tier commands that are really about managing Meshry as an app. And my hope is that for the most part, unless you're either an advanced user wanting to do some specific config of Meshry as an app, or if you're having to troubleshoot Meshry as an app, you hopefully sort of generally kind of don't care about a lot of these Meshry commands, or not something you don't care about, instead you don't use them that much. Rather, what you're interfacing with a lot more is, well, the capabilities, the performance management capabilities, the configuration management capabilities, the service mesh lifecycle management stuff, the other things that we've yet to talk about that are on roadmap, and that before things got too much further, that we might try to reorganize a little bit, and through some, this isn't the first time we've talked about this topic actually, but through some brainstorming, like Nitish had said, that taking those existing commands, all except for perf, and moving them under, well, system, I guess, Meshry CTL system update, Mesh3CTL system logs.
So I wanted to add another thing is from that Docker analogy is personally, I find those commands being at the top level, they have like 50 commands. It's so hard to figure out which one to use, what they mean. So I still feel it's a giant mess. If they were categorized into the right things, it would have been a lot easier. I mean, they have the top level, but they also have so many of the commands. So there's no categorization, and I feel for a better user experience, you need some kind of categorization.
So we'll give some room here for commentary. While people are collecting thoughts, I'll say, speaking of Docker and DockerCon earlier, and speaking of the CLI, just having gotten a pre-conference announcement preview, if I can say pre one more time in that sentence, be on the lookout for some really neat new Docker commands. It'll be probably the first time that post-split of Docker, kind of between Mirantis and kind of Docker core, if you will, that they'll be, they've had some time to refocus on their core persona, the developer. And it's pretty interesting. So if you weren't going to attend already, just with that cliffhanger, I expect to see you all there. I expect to see you all there supporting, console and Mesh3 actually. So, okay, well, comments on this sort of restructuring and kind of part of the general approach. When you look in the doc, kind of the other major category that was probably being considered is that of mesh. I think right now the three categories that are being thought of is Mesh3CTL system for from managing Mesh3 as an app, Mesh3CTL mesh for doing service mesh lifecycle management, and then performance management through perf. Now, for me, it's my hope that at some point, and maybe this will work out fine, but that the functionality around configuration management potentially is deep enough that, and maybe we can split it at that point, but it's potentially deep enough that maybe it would need its own top level. Although I don't know that time will tell. It might all fit under here, but there's now I'm just thinking out loud. While anybody have any comments?
Do we want so when we do mesh config, there's local and there's Kubernetes, like Docker Compose and Kubernetes. Do you want to add a flag that says I'm doing the config for Kubernetes, or I'm doing the config for?
You're right. Yeah, that's a great. We've definitely talked about. That's a great question. We've definitely talked about that, and that is that if you take the use case of something like provisioning a mesh, and I'm just going to make up these. These don't need to. Anyway, Mesh3CTL mesh start Istio maybe as the type of mesh. With a flag. Since Nick is in the habit of mentioning that other company that starts with an S and some of the work that they do on this call, I'll mention it as well and say that that's a total joke, by the way. Not reflecting on them specifically, but rather in general, my perspective is that to have a great UX, you want to try to keep the flags and subcommands as about as short as you can, so that you don't have to write out scripts around your CLI to do But to your use case, Nitish, if you're going to provision a service mesh using the CLI, And if that capability was to be under the command mesh, so meshrectl mesh run or start or install or provision or some verb, the type of mesh, what platform, which I think is what you were getting at, it's like, hey, is that, where is that system? And when we go to support environments, which is a roadmap item, it won't just be, saying Kubernetes wouldn't suffice. As a matter of fact, it might be that, well, maybe that's the wrong moniker anyway. Maybe it's like what kubeconfig or what Docker, or like maybe you can reduce the number of commands that you would have to put here if you had to put environment. Here's the, anyway, we don't have to figure it out now, but to your point, Nitish, I think that set of, that distinguishment and your ability to provision to one platform versus the next is probably, might make sense as a flag underneath.
I think it would make sense in the design specs to have like a tree that shows all our commands from the root and options underneath each one based on feature flags or flag toggles.
Totally. For that specific, totally. And then even better than that, when we're done up here on the, in this operation guide with a bunch of good examples. I mean, right now there's some usage, but on that specific discussion about what this portion would look like, how to identify the platform, how to start. Well, Mayank Shah, who's more focused on Linkerd than he is Meshri at the moment, had initiated a conversation on this. And then Saurabh Thakur, I'm not sure if he's on, yep, Saurabh is here. So Saurabh and a few other folks have given additional thought. So Saurabh, if you happen to have the issue number handy where we captured some of those thoughts.
Yeah, Ali, I'll just find it.
You know what? It's right here. It's actually in the doc.
Oh, cool.
This was an earlier, set of thoughts where actually this is a great proposal and very, I think highly of Mayank. But this was at a time before I think that we had said, hey, these need to be under, I'm not sure I'm using the right Cobra nomenclature, but that set of start commands needs to be under a subcommand, or needs to be a subcommand under something like mesh. So, but part of this discussion as well, I think bleeds into the next topic, which we've only briefly talked about on calls. We've had an early set of use cases for a Meshri controller, a set of Meshri CRDs, a Meshri operator. And there's a few of you in the community, Nitish is one, that have written these before. And so I don't know, Nitish, if maybe this is just a call out to the fact that there's a forthcoming spec and for a call for interest.
Yeah, I saw Kanishkar had kicked off something in the drive.
Yeah.
So that would be a good place to spec it out, and I could definitely share my thoughts.
I think I listed some basic features which I thought would make sense if we get operators up, like if you had a Meshri operator. Yeah, I don't have much. I have zero experience with operators, so yeah, I was able to write something based on my readings and stuff. So.
No, I can definitely help with that. I can
that would be great.
Yeah, I can get you up to speed with that. And based on a use case, we'll have to pick the right operator. Of course, we want an easier learning curve, but if you're doing something more advanced, we might have to use something like Cube Builder or Operator SDK. I think Cube Builder is a good choice, but I've been using Operator SDK and that's really intuitive, but falls behind the version that Cube Builder uses because it builds on top of Cube Builder.
We had Jared, whose last name escapes me, from D2IQ, had presented on on the Cloud Native Austin meetup a few weeks ago. He presented Kudo, which I thought had some interesting properties. As Kudo and I think Operator SDK are proposed for donation to the CNCF, it's a bit of a hot topic at the moment, comparisons. Now, speaking of Kudo, there is an offshoot of that project called, well, my understanding is that it's an offshoot called Cuddle, cuddle.dev. And as we look at SMI conformance and there's consideration to leverage cuddle.dev as part of that. And Naveen is with us. Naveen, are your exams done?
Yeah, the PPT actually he is to be presented by next week.
Okay. Don't make me kick you off the call. Good. Okay. Would you want to speak to this for a moment? The thoughts around this?
See, yeah, so basically what Curtle does is it is used for testing the current Kubernetes state. So what we were thinking was to let like the mesh would be deployed first, and then we would, I guess, deploy a sample app, and then we would check, okay, whether this CRD is defined or not, and whether it works as expected or not. So for CRD's installation and everything, we can leverage Curtle. And then for testing, like whether the response is in correct format or not, we can use Curtle, or we can even go for Kudo or something like, or we can use Kubernetes Go client for performing further next set of operations. But Curtle is cool because it uses declarative test. So we just have to supply, okay, this is test config, this is what needs to be asserted, and you need to wait like for some time, and the state should be like this. So there should exist a pod, or there should exist a resource which follows this spec. So I guess that is how Curtle works, and we were thinking of using that in SMI conformance.
There's a link to that initiative here. I do want to highlight that Mr. Jackson had been helpful in reviewing that much earlier on. And having spent some time on it recently, I feel pretty good about the notion that we'll be successful with this project. And I also, as part of that, to help to kind of tie in what might feel a bit random for all of you about the various initiatives and projects, there's a tie-in here as Meshri goes to provide conformance testing of the various service meshes that claim to integrate with SMI. Today, if you look at the first project that we had as a community, it's this landscape, of which there's been about 60 people who've contributed to this, so it's great. There's a section in here that talks about service mesh interface, SMI compatibility, and it's a static table. So hopefully for any of you that participate in that conformance tool initiative, part of what you will eventually do is displace this static compatibility with a dynamic one based on the conformance tests. Okay. 10 minutes out. Does anyone anyone have any other topics? Does people want to speak to what they've got going on this upcoming week? Things that we can expect at next week?
Hey Lee, this is Tajinder here again. I was just listening to what was being discussed, and I think I may, although I'm not yet super familiar with all the projects. So some of the ideas which came to my mind are regarding categorization of the CLI tool for Meshi. I think that was being discussed, and you're trying to organize the command structure and maybe learning from other tools like Docker and Kubernetes CLI tools, which they have, right? So one thing which I thought was, I think I saw many times I see wherever I use CLI tools, just because of the nature of the commands and the hierarchy might be too deep, depending on how much you want to do with that tool. So there are few cheat sheets which I find helpful many of the times for the complex tools. Even for Docker, I do refer cheat sheets where on a very high level, in one diagram they show, okay, this is for example Docker command tac help. That's one command you can run and to see what's all underneath it. And the major commands, they will say, okay, Docker image, Docker run. They will just visualize those in that cheat sheet. Although that doesn't cover everything, but that's just a cheat sheet on a very high level. I was wondering, like, if Meshi CTL already has this kind of thing there. I have not played with it, but just wondering if that might be helpful as it grows, or as we restructure it to something better.
Yeah, no, that's a very timely comment, actually. There is something of an effort to do, I guess you'd say that, to do that here. There's a blog post that's in draft that actually there's an active call for you specifically now to come and give it a review.
Okay.
Yeah, because well, first of all, I would say, hey, clearly the CSS on this site needs to change because purple's not our color. Yeah, that's a great comment, Tosh. And it's a timely. And then,
thank you.
Yeah, even at that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be a separate thing called a cheat sheet. Like that would also be great.
Are we supporting autocomplete as well, Bash and CSH?
We've tried. It's one of the longer outstanding open pull requests that it's sitting in the Meshi repo right now. And it's actually, well, no, I guess I think we closed it because we were trying to clean up old things. Mayank Shah, one of the individuals that I mentioned earlier, had opened up an auto-completion, had tried to do auto-completion for Meshi CTL using the Cobra framework. And I forget the details of a bug in the Cobra dependency or Cobra as a dependency. We'll pull it up so that folks might go check up on it, because it's been a month and a half to 2 months.
Hear me?
Hey, Simon.
Lee, just a great conversation. Just have a point. I think Nitish and you have a great conversation about Meshi CTL commands. So I think that's a topic that I'll discuss few months earlier before. That some of the time that the things that we have to do with the Meshi, we might do for the other things as well. As we do in the Kubernetes, we have to reset the cluster itself. Sometimes the cluster is where you go kicked in the dashboard and click on the dashboard, and then you might go for the reset the cluster. I think these type of the thing we should integrate with the Meshi CTL command So user can type meshry they have the option to clean up the Kubernetes cluster. And one things that I have also noticed that not a single tool that's doing some of the things with things you misuser type things that I have done when I playing with the Istio particularly. I forget to open up the ingress gateway, and then I hit the browser and knowing that's what's happening. Everything is fine, no errors, but I am unable to hit the application from the browser. So I think these kind of hint that's we are unable to expose the ingress gateway or the port you are conflicting some kind of these thing has to be including the mystery CTL command. So I encourage Nitish to join us in Monday in a CI meeting. I think topic is relevant to the CI working group, so we can discuss on that further. Because I think these are the commands that give the ultra edge to other things that's meshing not doing itself, but it's help other to doing the helps other to doing things like they reset the Kubernetes cluster, right? They hint that you are unable to open the ingress gateway. So these are the things I think we need to include. I think this to come up and then one day meeting and we can discuss on that. I think that's a more topic of the CI.
Yep, makes sense. Yep, if you were trying to facilitate integration testing through the CI, and that if that includes sample apps and the configuration of an ingress gateway, that makes sense.
I just wanted to ask, Meshry CTL or Meshry doesn't take ownership of a Kubernetes cluster, right? So I'm not sure about cleaning up the entire cluster. You would just own your namespace and you would have your service accounts to deal with that. So cleaning up Meshry, sure, but not anything else. Unless I misunderstood, Sai.
I just think that some of the time we work with the demo apps. So we are done with the demo apps and then we forget to reset the cluster for itself. So I think if the option that we're giving the Meshry CTL command, whether you come up and clean up the Kubernetes cluster, I think that's not a maybe relevant topic, but I think we can have a discussion on that. But the most relevant topic I think we just hit out the Kubernetes cluster with the Istio to the adopter there as well. So that Istio is working well, Meshry is working well, Kubernetes is working well, but user does the mistake. He doesn't open the ingress gateway manually. So that's kind of a hint that I never see anybody doing that. So I think these are the extra thing. But if we done that, I think that's give a user a very good friendly environment. They have trusted more on Meshry. That is, these things are not doing Meshry just not doing their own stuff, but other stuff as well. So they have intelligence built in that it takes other things to consider before connecting to the meshes. So that's our point. I think that's some discussion we going forward has give us a good idea, good way forward.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just probing certain things and saying that your application isn't going to work because the gateway, ingress gateway doesn't expose the service, or just giving a usage description and prerequisites for.
Yes, Lee. Yes, Nitish. That's what I'm talking about. I think Monday is a good topic to discuss for.
Yeah, you can send me the invite. I don't have the.
Okay, sure. I will send out.
Very good. We're at the top of the hour. Anybody have anything else real quick? Good to go? Nice. All right. Congrats, Chaim. I hope you guys don't get buried in the next 4 or 5 months of assimilation. I know there's many I's to dot and T's to cross before all that happens, but
we're actually very excited about the process, and I assume it's going to be a lot of work, but a lot of fun too.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Okay. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you guys next week.
All right. Thanks, Lee.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.